CWO4 Vic Pinion, U.S. Navy retired, telling some stories of my naval career. Well, this is a continuation of the previous one on Cat 3's launch valve stroke times and the launch valve situation on the number 3 Catapult. We got a message from the Naval Air Engineering Center via ComNav Land with a take Ref A for action message to inspect the capacity selector valve on all 4 catapults for a certain problem. It had to do with a piston inside the capacity selector valve. Well, we started inspecting them and we found on the number 2 catapult a threaded rod inside that CSV where the threads were worn razor sharp. Now these were a blocked square base thread and they were worn razor sharp in the middle of that piston rod. Man, that's worrisome, but still usable. So we reassembled it. I'm concerned about that. But we also discovered the problem we were looking for wasn't in that valve. But we discovered another problem was a piston on the end of that threaded rod was installed backwards on the number 2 Catapult CSV. Now talking with Chief Neely, he didn't know, we looked in the book and so forth and we couldn't find how it was supposed to be installed in the book. We looked in the blueprints, it didn't show exactly how it was supposed to be installed. But we did look in the maintenance requirement card where it told us, give us some certain tools to use to disassemble and reassemble that thing. If you use the tools that the Naval Air Engineering Center required you to use, you had to install that piston backwards. Okay? And it had been installed and they had used those tools. Otherwise, you'd have to use a deep well socket. Well, okay, we reassembled Cat 2's capacity selector valve and went on to Cat 3's. Well, in Cat 3's, we discovered a multitude of problems. We discovered that piston rod, not only are those threads razor sharp now, but 4 threads are missing. They're broken off from the shaft. They're not physically missing. They're worn away and gone mostly, but the stubs of them were broken off the shaft. They're still floating in there. Okay? I am not going to allow that catapult to be used with that. I'm just not going to allow it. Okay. I checked supply. They had 4 new of those thread rods in stock. I drew one of them. And Chief Neely is screwing that into the valve. And it bound up halfway through, almost halfway through. It bound up. It got tighter and tighter, and then it bound up. You couldn't move it anymore. She screwed it. It turned out the thread pitch was wrong. It didn't match the thread pitch of the nut that was in there that it went through to set that valve. We checked it out with the blueprints and everything, and yeah, the thread pitch was wrong on this new piston rod. Okay, I drew the other 3, same thing. All 3 of them are wrong. The thread pitch is wrong, we can't use them. That's why those 2 piston rods had been worn like that. Is the shipyard that had installed them had not noticed, or nobody had apparently noticed until this time. And they'd been being used for an unknown amount of time until they literally wore those threads out. Well, I'm not going to let this cat be used. So I checked next higher assembly. They had in supply a whole brand new capacity selector valve assembly in a wooden crate. And I drew that. We took it out of the crate. Well, thinking about, okay, we still got to check it for the defect that the message called for. So we checked for that defect. We didn't find that defect. But we did find that that piston rod had the wrong thread pitch. Okay. Now, we also installed it and tried using it. And the launch fire stroke times are way, way, way off. I mean, way beyond what anything ever been that we had records of. So we checked. We discovered that the flexible coupling that goes between the CSV and the shaft encoder, where it drives the electronics, that flexible coupling was, in the bellows part of it, was broken. It had one little tab still holding it together. Made my hair stand up. Had that broken, it would not have given the new setting, because it couldn't have driven the shaft encoder. So we drew a new one from supply and installed it. We discovered some other problems that measured the old valve assembly and the new valve assembly and see what the difference between the two of them is. And we discovered that there was the thread protrusion, not thread protrusion, but rod protrusion between the old valve and the new one of quite a bit. And so I figured, well, that's probably it, you know. So I said, okay, I'm fed up with this crap. There's too many things wrong. I'm going to draft a message to the Naval Air Engineering Center, tell them about this stuff, and especially with the launch fire stroke timer switch that the guy had replaced and destroyed my base times. I'm not comfortable with this Catapult being safe to use. I'm just not. And I'm not going to allow it to be used until we can get the Naval Air Engineering Center to come out, do something about it. I sent a message telling them about that. And they came back and said, we'll have a team on its way out there now. And then a couple hours later, another message. We've decided not to send that team, and that your Catapult should be safe to use with this configuration. I did not. The only way, I'm sweating a load. So I decided that I would send a CASREP message. I would CASREP that Catapult as a casualty report, send the Catapult down until you engineers come out here and do something about it. Well, I drafted the CASREP message. Chief Neely and Chief Paris had requested that I let them play with those two valves. And I said, yeah, we can do that. You guys play with it. I'm going to go drive a message. And because it's the middle of the night, I'm going to have the ship's CASREP officer, who kept the yeoman 24/7 in his office, to type the message. And then I could, instead of waking my yeoman up, you know, I'd get him out of rack to check the message. I'd use the CASREP officer. Well, I have to carry on in the next film. Y'all carry on.